Hello class and welcome to week 7. I first want to apologize to a good bit of you for the week 5 paper that I gave back to you all this week. When I first started grading your papers, I was using a former version of the rubric. The rubric had been updated between the terms, and so the rubric that I was looking at had critical elements addressing Mr. Smith's otherness, and it also spelled Miss Rose differently. I know in a couple of papers I corrected the spelling of Miss Rose, and so I sincerely apologize for my error. Once I caught it, I went back in and made adjustments because you all did address the power and privilege dynamics of that case. And I really do appreciate how you all were able to sort of pick apart and see the many different layers of power and privilege that were in that counseling room between those two individuals. However, I think some people were a little bit hesitant to explicitly call out race. And the reason why I say explicitly call out race, you have a client in a cross-cultural relationship. And so again, I ask you guys, when you look at these case studies, to really imagine that they are real, to put yourselves in those situations. And so imagine if you were Miss Rose. Imagine if you were an African-American lesbian counselor working with this white male client who says, you know, a grown white man like me should not be asking for help from someone like you. Now, on top of all of the other issues that he brings to the table, including the incredible sense of inadequacy, fear, powerlessness that would accompany, you know, losing your hours at work, wanting to provide for your family and being unable to, you have a gentleman who has explicitly introduced into the counseling session race. What do you do with it? And so our cartoon this week, we don't have a poem, we have a cartoon, because many of you, when I was grading your responses, I thought about the elephant in the room and how sometimes people don't acknowledge it. And what I mean by that is, I am a black counselor. I am young. I've been younger than most of my clients in my career. I've had clients talk about age issues, and I've had to be very explicit and say, you know, client, I understand that this is very important to you. I have to disclose I'm this age, and I want to make sure you're comfortable working with me. That is acknowledging the elephant in the room. It's not making the session about me. It's acknowledging what the client has talked about and really putting the ball in their court in terms of them taking charge of the help and the therapy that they need. And this can happen in multiple different ways. I've had clients, you know, who have children and they want to know if I have children. And if I don't have children, how could I possibly help them? You know, even when I was married, I had clients, you know, ask me if I was married now that I'm divorced. You know, so clients, they ask me, well, are you married? Well, if you're not married, you can't help me, you know, that kind of thing. And so you have to be willing to have the conversation with the client. And so the elephant in the room are those differences. And sometimes they are explicit. Sometimes a client like Mr. Smith brings it up. Sometimes they are not spoken, and you still have to have the comfort and the courage within yourself to broach the topic, just in case this is something that might stand in the way of the client's true healing and recovery. What I want to say about bias is no one is without bias, okay? I don't want to make it seem like it's this evil, hateful thing. We all have preferences. We all have biases. I'm biased toward ABC News. I watch ABC, Good Morning America, George Stephanopoulos. I watch all of that. And sometimes I have to remember, oh, NBC is out there, and oh, CBS is out there. And so where I consume my news, I sometimes have to remind myself to go somewhere else and get a different news anchor telling me about the day. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so acknowledging your biases can really be helpful. The last thing I'll say about biases, I had a student intern who was working with a client, and I was listening to this session, and in the middle of the session, the client discloses that she had been raped, and my student intern, you know, just glossed right on over that and went to the next topic. And so when we had supervision, in our next supervision session, I rewound the tape, I played that segment of the session, and I asked her about it. And see, a bias for my student intern was she had been raped, and she was not ready to have that conversation with the client because no one had ever had that conversation with her. And so again, it's helpful to know your biases because you don't want your own biases to stand in the way of processing with the client the elephant in the room. Please let me know if any of this makes sense, or if it doesn't. I'm happy to meet one-on-one with you all to talk more about it. This week you have some phenomenal articles that you're reading, and you also have another discussion, and it's open, and so there won't be any small groups. I look forward to reading your drafts for the final project, and I'll get those back to you. On Thursday, I will be traveling, and I will be out of town. However, I should still be available via email if you need me explicitly on Thursday. Have a great week. I look forward to seeing what you guys produce, and take care.